So are we still firing Ryan Day? Is that something we're doing? Because I heard that a lot. Day's got to go. Ryan Day can't do this. He can't do that. Really? Really? That was your take. He was something like 49-1 against Big Ten teams not named Michigan, and that one loss was by 1 point to the number one team in the country, who he just blasted into another galaxy in the Rose Bowl earlier this week. That was the one loss, and people want to run him out of town. Okay. Yeah. I agree with Nick Saban here. Rivalries are what make college football great, but the psychology between Ohio State and Michigan, it's different, and Ohio State's got to figure it out. But guess what? That's more a message for the fans, because the team has figured it out. So perhaps infamously at this point, given my college football fandom, I picked Tennessee to upset Ohio State. I didn't think you'd have straight chalk in the first round, but you did. The chalk has continued over and over again, and I kind of think it will going into the next round. We'll just see. But Ohio State looks darn near unstoppable. Jeremiah Smith is unstoppable. He doesn't look unstoppable. He just is unstoppable. So when Ohio State lost to Michigan, I thought that was going to hang around the locker room. I was worried for the Buckeyes' sake that it was going to be in their heads that, hey, we're playing this game. Oh, man, we didn't beat Michigan. Oh, man. Ryan Day has taken that card that I put down, and he has hit me with the Uno reverse. He has slapped me in the face with it, because the next two teams, who I don't think were bad, by the way, or overrated, or frauds, Ohio State is just capable of being that good. Tennessee and Oregon, who went a combined 23-2 this year. Ryan Day beat them 83-38. Had a 34-0 lead over a team that beat them earlier this season. Now, beating a team in the same season twice is really hard. Ryan Day showed you why it's hard to beat a great team with a great coaching staff twice in a season. Because that was one of the most impressive coaching performances I have seen this year in college football. It might be the most impressive, which is incredible, because the Michigan game was the worst coaching performance that I saw in college football this year. And yet, in a 3-game stretch, the same staff with the same players produced those two ends of the spectrum. This is why college football is played on the field, not on paper, because you can't possibly explain how you go and just blast a team that beat you earlier this year, who hasn't lost to anyone and has 3 wins against college football playoff teams. You can't explain that other than it's great coaching. Ryan Day outcoached Dan Lanning, and Chip Kelly outcoached Tosh Lupoi, Oregon's defense coordinator, and Jim Knowles, the Ohio State defense coordinator, he outcoached Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator. The talent gap, they got plenty of discussion after that game took place. You can make an argument Ohio State has a better roster. Fine. But I watched those two rosters go toe-to-toe, and Oregon was the better team on October 12th. They didn't just win the game. They won the game whilst making a myriad of self-inflicted mistakes and critical moments that didn't go their way. Now, certainly there were parts of that game that didn't go Ohio State's way, but Oregon was the better team that day. And for Ryan Day to not just turn around, make the adjustments from that game and win, but to have a 34-0 lead, that's unconscionable. People like myself, a lot of people rightly thought that this game was going to be tight, was going to be close, was going to be kind of a repeat of what we saw the first time, and it wasn't. And it all came down to coaching. The game plan from Chip Kelly and the offense was perfect. And the game plan from Jim Knowles and the defense was flawlessly executed. You pair great coaching with great players, this is the result. And Ohio State from here on out, I'm not picking against them. Not when they play like that. Tennessee is someone who I talked about frequently on the show as boy, they're flying under the radar here. And you know what? Tennessee's defense, really good. Oregon's defense this year, really good. Didn't matter. They both gave up 40 plus. Will Howard is playing closer to a first-round draft pick than I've ever seen before. I don't know that he's going to be. I'm just saying there's no way he doesn't make an NFL roster if he can make throws like this. The Jeremiah Smith is incredible, but the play that stood out the most to me from that Rose Bowl game wasn't something Jeremiah Smith did. It was the seam shot for the second touchdown that Will Howard made to Emeka Egbuka, who's a really good receiver. But the corner, Brandon Johnson, is in good position underneath. He actually gets a hand on the ball. And Egbuka has the concentration and strength to haul it in anyway. But that throw was emblematic of how specific and phenomenal Will Howard has been over the last couple of games. So since the Michigan game, which was the worst coaching performance of the year for anybody in college football, even worse than Alabama's defensive staff against Vanderbilt. That's a 7-win Vanderbilt team. That's far more respect. I know Michigan ends up winning 8 games because they beat Alabama in the bowl game, but Ohio State was at home. Bama was on the road. Bama was on the road, and Kane Womack couldn't figure it out on the defensive staff. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly were at home, and they couldn't figure out, we have an alien on the outside with 2 other NFL receivers. Maybe we should throw them the ball when Michigan's first-round corner isn't playing in the game. The fact that they couldn't, pretty inexplicable. Especially when you watch the last 2 games where they're just making a concerted effort. They look more like 2019 LSU or last year's Washington team than any other team in college football has. They're going, so we've got NFL receivers and we've got a good quarterback. Why don't we, throw it down the field? Dial up some deep shots? Ohio State put on a coaching masterclass. They watched the Big Ten championship game film, and they saw what Oregon struggled with against Penn State. Tempo, motions, formation shifts. It caused communication issues on the back end. Oregon didn't clean those things up. And Dan Lanning and his staff, they've got to be better than that. They absolutely do. I think Lanning can be better than that in the future. But on that day, they weren't. They didn't have the adjustments. We can talk about the rest versus rust factor. Certainly felt like rust was far more in play than anything else for the teams that had the bye given the long layoff. But I don't know that it would have mattered because Tennessee, they didn't have a month-long layoff between their final game and when they went and played Ohio State. It was a longer layoff, but Ohio State has figured out what works, and surprise, surprise, it's playing to their strength. For those of you who are in the camp of why do we focus on recruiting? Stars don't matter. Blah-de-dee, blah-de-dee, blah. Lots of receivers and rankings out there. Jeremiah Smith was a 5-star plus wideout. That's what it looks like. That's not normal. He's going to be in college football for 2 years after this one. I think he'll get drafted pretty high one day. Just a thought. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.